Picture this: darkness absolute, engines screaming overhead, and somewhere in that black void, death hunts with radar eyes. For 3 years, German bomber crews owned the night sky, terrorizing British cities with impunity, while Allied fighters stumbled blindly below. Then came whispers of an American Phantom, a twin-engine predator so advanced that the Luftwaffe pilots called it der Schwarze Geist, the Black Ghost. Most never lived to describe what hunted them in those final, terrifying moments before their aircraft exploded in the darkness. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The cathedral silence of night stretched across the English countryside, broken only by the distant drone of Heinkel engines. High above the sleeping villages of Kent, Oberleutnant Klaus Richter adjusted his oxygen mask and peered into the impenetrable darkness. His He-111 bomber carried 2 tons of incendiaries destined for the London docks, part of Germany's relentless night bombing campaign that had terrorized Britain since 1940. For Richter and thousands like him, the darkness was sanctuary. No Allied fighter could touch them in the black void above the clouds. The Luftwaffe had mastered nocturnal warfare through bitter experience. Their pilots navigated by radio beams, used specialized night bombing techniques, and relied on the simple fact that no enemy aircraft could find them in the endless night. British fighters might patrol hopefully below, but without radar or specialized equipment, they were as blind as newborn kittens. The mathematical odds were overwhelming. In a sky stretching hundreds of miles in every direction, finding a single bomber in absolute darkness was nearly impossible. Richter's confidence was shared by every German airman flying night missions over Europe. They had good reason for their certainty. The Royal Air Force had tried everything to stop the nocturnal raids. They had launched Bristol Beaufighters equipped with primitive radar, but the early AI Mark IV sets were unreliable and required perfect positioning to work. They had experimented with searchlights and ground-controlled intercepts, but the results were pathetic. For every bomber shot down, dozens more reached their targets unmolested. The statistics told a grim story. German night bombers enjoyed a survival rate above 90%. Their losses came primarily from mechanical failures, weather, and anti-aircraft fire, rather than enemy fighters. The darkness that had once been neutral territory had become Germany's exclusive hunting ground. British cities burned while their defenders clawed helplessly at empty air. On this particular night in October 1944, Richter's confidence would prove fatally misplaced. As his Heinkel droned westward toward London, sophisticated electronics were already painting his aircraft on a radar screen dozens of miles away. A twin-engine Shadow was climbing to intercept, its crew guided by instruments that could see through darkness as clearly as daylight. The hunter had become the hunted. The Richter had no way of knowing his death was already approaching at 300 miles per hour. The first indication came as a faint vibration through the bomber's airframe. Richter frowned, checking his engine instruments. Everything appeared normal. Behind him, his radio operator was scanning frequencies, listening for the familiar German guidance signals that would lead them to their target. The gunner in the ventral position reported nothing unusual, though his visibility was limited to whatever the moon might illuminate below. Then came the sound that would haunt German bomber crews across Europe, the distinctive whine of twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines at full power. But this was impossible. Allied fighters didn't hunt at night, and certainly not at 22,000 feet in complete darkness. Richter's training told him to maintain course and altitude. Whatever aircraft might be nearby, it couldn't possibly locate his bomber in the vast black sky. The explosion came without warning. 20-millimeter cannon shells ripped through the Heinkel's starboard wing, followed immediately by a stream of 50-caliber bullets that shredded the fuselage. Hydraulic lines severed, fuel tanks punctured, and electrical systems sparked and died. The bomber rolled violently to the right as Richter fought desperately with the controls. Behind him, his crew was screaming over the intercom, but their words were lost in the rush of wind through torn metal. As the Heinkel spiraled toward the earth below, Richter caught a glimpse of his attacker silhouetted against the stars. The aircraft was like nothing he had ever seen before. Twin-boomed, with a distinctive glass nose that seemed to glow with internal light. For a brief moment, he saw the American star insignia on the wing, and then his world dissolved in flame as the bomber's fuel tanks ignited. Miles away, in the cockpit of the mysterious attacker, Captain James Morrison was already banking toward his next target. His radar operator, Lieutenant Robert Chen, was tracking two more German bombers approaching from the southeast. The SCR-720 radar set was painting them clearly on its green phosphor screen, their positions updated every few seconds as the antenna rotated in its distinctive pattern. Morrison keyed his radio microphone. "Control, Nighthawk 7 has Splash 1 bandit at grid reference Charlie 7, pursuing additional contacts bearing 140 degrees, Angels 2-1. The response came back immediately, vectoring him toward the next group of German bombers that ground radar had detected forming up over the English Channel. This was the P-61 Black Widow in its element, a purpose-built night fighter that could hunt in complete darkness with deadly precision. Unlike the improvised night fighters that had come before, the Black Widow was designed from the outset to own the night sky. Its sophisticated radar could track multiple targets simultaneously. Its heavy armament could destroy any aircraft in a single burst. Its twin engines and advanced aerodynamics gave it the performance to catch even the fastest German bombers. But the path to this moment had been neither simple nor swift. The story of the P-61 began years earlier, in the desperate days when Britain stood alone against the Luftwaffe's nocturnal terror campaign. American military observers watching from their neutral position had recognized that future wars would be fought around the clock. If the United States entered the conflict, it would need weapons capable of fighting in complete darkness. The revelation had come through intelligence reports and first-hand observation of the London Blitz. German bombers were methodically destroying British industrial capacity and civilian morale, striking with virtual impunity under cover of darkness. Traditional fighter tactics developed for daylight combat were useless when visibility dropped to zero. Something entirely new was needed. An aircraft that could see in the dark and strike with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. In the halls of Wright Field and the design studios of Northrop Corporation, engineers were already sketching the outline of America's answer to nocturnal warfare. The requirements seemed almost impossible. An aircraft that could carry heavy radar equipment without sacrificing performance, mount enough firepower to destroy any enemy aircraft in a single attack, and possess the range and endurance to patrol vast areas of night sky. The technical challenges were staggering. Radar technology in 1940 was crude and experimental. The electronic components were fragile, power-hungry, and prone to failure. Installing such equipment in a fighter aircraft meant redesigning everything from the electrical system to the very structure of the aircraft itself. The radar antenna had to be mounted where it could scan freely without interference, while the operator needed space to work the complex controls and interpret the glowing displays. Traditional fighter design philosophy emphasized speed and maneuverability above all else. Night hiding. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Demanded different priorities: stability as a gun platform, endurance for long patrols, and the internal volume to accommodate sophisticated electronics. The aircraft would need to be larger and heavier than any fighter previously built, yet still possess the performance characteristics necessary to intercept fast-moving bombers. Jack Northrop, the brilliant engineer behind Northrop Corporation, embraced these challenges with characteristic innovation. His design team proposed a radical configuration, a twin-boomed layout that would provide the stability and internal space needed for night-fighting equipment while maintaining excellent flight characteristics. The central nacelle would house the crew, radar equipment, and heavy armament, while the twin booms would carry the engines and support the tail surfaces. The configuration offered several advantages that would prove crucial in combat. The twin-boom design eliminated the torque problems that plague single-engine fighters, providing a stable platform for precision gunnery. The spacious central nacelle could accommodate not only the pilot, but also a dedicated radar operator, essential for managing the complex electronics that would guide the aircraft to its targets. The nose section could be devoted entirely to radar equipment and forward-firing armament. As the design evolved through 1941, the specifications became increasingly ambitious. The aircraft would mount four 20-millimeter cannons in the belly, supplemented by four 50-caliber machine guns in a dorsal turret for additional firepower. The SCR-720 radar set, still under development, would provide the electronic eyes needed to locate targets in complete darkness. Twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines would deliver the power needed to carry this substantial equipment load while maintaining competitive performance. By early 1942, with America fully committed to the war, the urgency of the night fighter program had reached critical levels. Reports from the European theater painted a grim picture of German nocturnal bombing effectiveness. The Luftwaffe was not only terrorizing civilian populations, but also disrupting industrial production and military logistics through precise night attacks. Without an effective counter, Allied forces would remain vulnerable to round-the-clock assault. The prototype P-61, designated XP-61, first flew on May 26, 1942, from Northrop's facility in Hawthorne, California. Test pilot Vance Breese lifted the ungainly-looking aircraft into the California sky, beginning a flight test program that would span the next 2 years. From the beginning, the Black Widow demonstrated characteristics that set it apart from every other fighter in the world. The first surprise was its handling qualities. Despite its substantial size and weight, the P-61 was remarkably pleasant to fly. The twin-boomed configuration provided excellent stability and control response, while the tricycle landing gear made ground handling far superior to conventional tailwheel fighters. Pilots transitioning from single-engine fighters found the Black Widow forgiving and predictable, crucial characteristics for aircraft operating in the demanding environment of night combat. Performance testing revealed capabilities that exceeded expectations in some areas while falling short in others. The Black Widow's top speed of 366 miles per hour was respectable but not outstanding compared to the latest German fighters. However, its ceiling of 33,100 feet was excellent, and its range of 3,000 miles with external fuel tanks was unprecedented for a fighter aircraft. More importantly, its stability and precision as a gun platform were extraordinary, allowing accurate shooting under conditions that would challenge any other fighter. The radar installation proved to be the aircraft's greatest strength and its most persistent problem. The SCR-720 set, when working properly, could detect aircraft targets at ranges up to 10 miles and provide precise guidance for intercepts in complete darkness. The system could track multiple targets simultaneously and even provide limited ground mapping capability. However, the electronics were delicate and prone to failure, requiring constant maintenance by specially trained technicians. Combat evaluation began in earnest as production aircraft rolled off Northrop's assembly lines. The first operational P-61 squadron, the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron, received their aircraft in early 1944 and immediately began intensive training in night intercept procedures. The pilots and radar operators had to master not only the aircraft itself, but also the complex tactics of nocturnal combat. Night fighting demanded entirely different skills from daylight aerial combat. Visual references were minimal or non-existent, requiring crews to rely entirely on instruments and radar guidance. Intercepts had to be planned and executed with mathematical precision, as there was no opportunity to make visual corrections during the final approach. The radar operator became as important as the pilot, guiding the aircraft through the darkness toward an enemy that might never be seen until the moment of attack. Training revealed both the potential and the limitations of radar-guided night fighting. Under ideal conditions, a skilled crew could locate, track, and attack enemy aircraft with devastating effectiveness. The P-61's heavy armament could destroy any bomber with a short burst, while its radar allowed attacks to be pressed home with minimal warning to the target. However, the electronics were sensitive to weather conditions, electromagnetic interference, and mechanical problems that could leave the aircraft effectively blind. The first combat deployment came as Allied forces prepared for the invasion of Normandy. P-61 squadrons were positioned at airfields across southern England, tasked with providing night air defense against German bomber and fighter bomber attacks.
The timing was crucial, as the Luftwaffe was expected to make desperate night attacks against the invasion fleet and supporting infrastructure. Initial combat encounters were mixed. Some German aircraft were intercepted and destroyed with clinical precision, their crews having no warning of the approaching Black Widow until cannon shells began tearing through their aircraft. Other intercepts failed due to equipment malfunctions, weather conditions, or simple human error in the complex procedures required for night combat. The learning curve was steep, and every mission provided valuable lessons about the realities of nocturnal warfare. The true test came during Operation Overlord itself. German bomber and fighter bomber units, desperately attempting to disrupt the Allied landings, found themselves facing an unexpected threat in the darkness above the English Channel. P-61 squadrons, working in coordination with ground-controlled intercept stations, began systematically hunting down German aircraft attempting to reach the invasion beaches under cover of darkness. Flight Sergeant Wilhelm Hoffmann, piloting a Junkers U-88 loaded with armor-piercing bombs intended for Allied shipping, experienced the Black Widow's lethality firsthand. Flying at 18,000 feet through thick clouds over the channel, Hoffmann believed himself invisible to enemy fighters. His aircraft's radar warning receiver was silent, and no enemy aircraft had been reported in his area by German ground control. The first indication of danger came as tracer rounds began flashing past his cockpit canopy. Before Hoffmann could react, 20mm shells punched through his aircraft's wing roots and engine nacelles. The Junkers began losing altitude rapidly as both engines caught fire, forcing Hoffmann and his crew to bail out into the cold waters below. They never saw the aircraft that killed them. Captain Morrison, claiming his fourth victory of the night, was already turning toward another radar contact. His aircraft had operated continuously for over 5 hours, refueling twice from airborne tankers while maintaining patrol coverage over the invasion fleet. The P-61's endurance allowed for extended missions that would have been impossible with shorter-range fighters, providing persistent coverage that denied the Germans any safe passage.
Through the night sky. As the Normandy campaign progressed, German aircrew began reporting encounters with what they described as phantom fighters that could attack without warning in complete darkness. Luftwaffe intelligence struggled to understand these reports as they contradicted everything known about Allied night fighting capabilities. Some pilots claimed to have been attacked by aircraft that appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking with precision that seemed impossible in the darkness. The psychological impact on German bomber crews became significant. Men who at once felt secure in the sanctuary of night now flew their missions in constant fear of invisible attackers. Formation discipline began to break down as aircraft scattered at the first sign of combat, reducing the effectiveness of German night bombing operations. The mere presence of P-61s in an area was enough to disrupt German tactics and reduce their operational effectiveness. Technical analysis of early combat results revealed areas where the Black Widow excelled and others where improvements were needed. The aircraft's radar performance was generally excellent when properly maintained, allowing successful intercepts under conditions that would have been impossible for earlier night fighters. The heavy armament proved devastatingly effective, with most successful attacks resulting in the immediate destruction of the target aircraft. However, the complexity of the radar system created maintenance challenges that limited operational availability. Each P-61 required extensive ground support, including specialized electronic technicians, radar calibration equipment, and stocks of delicate vacuum tubes and components. Squadron maintenance officers learned to cannibalize damaged aircraft to keep others operational, while requesting priority shipments of critical electronic components from the United States. The dorsal turret, initially considered one of the aircraft's key advantages, proved problematic in practice. The turret's weight and drag reduced overall performance, while mechanical problems frequently left it inoperative. More significantly, coordinating fire between the fixed forward guns and the flexible turret proved difficult in the heat of combat. Many squadrons eventually had their turrets removed to improve performance and reduce maintenance requirements.
Combat tactics evolved rapidly as crews gained experience with the unique capabilities and limitations of their aircraft. The most successful teams developed close coordination between pilot and radar operator with clearly defined roles and communication procedures. The radar operator became the mission commander during intercepts, guiding the pilot through the complex process of locating, tracking, and attacking targets in darkness. Standard intercept procedures began with ground radar detecting incoming German aircraft and vectoring P-61s to the general area. Once airborne radar contact was established, usually at ranges of 5 to 8 miles, the radar operator would guide the pilot through a carefully planned approach designed to position the Black Widow directly behind and slightly below the target aircraft. This position minimized the chances of visual detection while providing the best angle for the devastating forward-firing armament. The final attack phase required precise coordination and split-second timing. The pilot had to position the aircraft exactly as directed while preparing the gun systems and managing engine power and flight controls. The radar operator monitored target movement and provided last-second corrections while also operating defensive systems and maintaining situational awareness. When everything came together perfectly, the result was the sudden destruction of an enemy aircraft whose crew never knew they were being hunted. Training programs in the United States began producing crews specifically for P-61 operations, recognizing that night fighting required specialized skills that differed significantly from daylight combat techniques. Pilots learned to fly entirely by instruments, maintaining precise control of their aircraft during complex intercept maneuvers. Radar operators mastered the intricacies of the SCR-720 system and learned to interpret the often ambiguous signals that indicated enemy aircraft in the darkness. The success of these training programs became evident as newly arrived crews demonstrated increasing effectiveness in their first combat missions. Unlike earlier night fighter operations that required months of combat experience before crews became proficient, P-61 teams were achieving kills within weeks of their arrival in theater. The systematic approach to training, combined with the superior capabilities of the aircraft itself, was producing a new generation of night fighters that could dominate the darkness. By the autumn of 1944, P-61 squadrons were operating not only over the English Channel in northern France, but also in the Pacific Theater, where different challenges and opportunities awaited. Japanese bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, accustomed to operating with impunity in the vast Pacific night, found themselves facing an unexpected threat as Black Widow squadrons began patrolling the approaches to Allied bases and invasion fleets. The strategic impact of the P-61's introduction was becoming apparent in German operational reports. Night bombing missions were being canceled or modified due to the presence of Allied night fighters, reducing the effectiveness of one of Germany's few remaining offensive capabilities. Aircrew losses among night bomber units were climbing steadily, forcing the Luftwaffe to reassign experienced crews to other duties or to accept reduced operational tempo. Intelligence intercepts revealed German attempts to develop countermeasures against the new Allied night fighters. Electronic warfare specialists were studying captured equipment and developing jamming techniques designed to blind the sophisticated radar systems. New tactics were being distributed to bomber crews, emphasizing the importance of maintaining strict radio silence and varying flight paths to reduce the chances of interception. However, these countermeasures proved largely ineffective against the P-61's advanced electronics and the increasingly sophisticated tactics being employed by Allied night fighter crews. The Black Widow's radar was frequency agile and resistant to most jamming techniques, while its exceptional performance allowed it to pursue and attack even evasive targets. German night bombing operations continued to suffer mounting losses as the autumn progressed. The aircraft that had begun as an experimental response to German night bombing supremacy was proving itself to be a war-winning weapon system. In the hands of well-trained crews, the P-61 Black Widow was achieving what had seemed impossible just 2 years earlier: complete control of the night sky. The darkness that had once protected German bombers had become their executioner, patrolled by American phantoms that struck without warning and showed no mercy.
As winter approached and the war entered its final phase, the P-61 squadrons prepared for the ultimate test of their capabilities. German desperation was growing, and intelligence indicated that the Luftwaffe was planning massive night attacks designed to disrupt Allied supply lines and break the momentum of the advancing armies. The Black Widows would be ready, their crews confident in their aircraft and their mission. The night belonged to them now, and they intended to keep it that way.
Headset as his Heinkel He-219 Uhu climbed through 15,000 feet over the Ruhr Valley. The twin-engine night fighter was Germany's most advanced nocturnal aircraft, equipped with radar and heavy armament that had made it feared among Allied bomber crews. Tonight, however, Kessler was not hunting. His aircraft carried reconnaissance equipment and electronic intelligence-gathering gear, tasked with mapping Allied night fighter positions and capabilities before the main assault began. The mission briefing had been sobering. German intelligence estimated that the Allies now possessed over 200 specialized night fighters, mostly British Mosquitoes and Beaufighters, supplemented by an unknown number of American aircraft designated P-61. The American machines were particularly concerning, as surviving aircrew described them as possessing radar performance and firepower far exceeding anything previously encountered. Some reports seemed almost fantastical, claiming successful intercepts at ranges exceeding 8 miles in complete darkness. Kessler's orders were explicit. Locate and identify Allied night fighter patrol patterns, determine radar capabilities, and assess the feasibility of large-scale penetration missions. His Uhu carried the latest electronic warfare equipment, including sensitive receivers designed to detect Allied radar emissions and direction-finding gear that could pinpoint the location of enemy aircraft. If successful, his reconnaissance would provide the tactical intelligence needed for Operation Steinbock to achieve maximum effectiveness. The first indication that something had gone wrong came as a faint contact appeared on Kessler's own radar screen. The signature was unlike anything in German identification manuals, large, twin-engined, approaching from the northwest at high speed. Kessler's radar operator, Unteroffizier Max Weber, fine-tuned the display and announced estimated range as 12 kilometers and closing rapidly. No Allied aircraft had ever been detected at such extreme range. Kessler immediately began evasive maneuvers, diving toward a cloud layer while his electronic warfare officer activated jamming equipment designed to blind enemy radar systems. The German night fighter possessed excellent performance and sophisticated defensive systems that had allowed it to survive encounters with British interceptors. However, the approaching contact maintained perfect tracking despite all countermeasures, suggesting radar technology far more advanced than intelligence estimates had indicated. Captain Sarah Mitchell, piloting Black Widow Midnight Express, watched her radar screen with professional satisfaction as the German aircraft attempted to escape into the weather. Her radar operator, Technical Sergeant David Park, was providing precise tracking data while the sophisticated SCR-720 system burned through German jamming attempts with ease. The P-61's electronics had been specifically designed to counter known German defensive measures, and the enemy's evasion attempts were merely delaying the inevitable. Mitchell keyed her radio microphone. Control, Midnight Express has contact bearing 045 degrees, range 8 miles and closing. Target appears to be attempting electronic countermeasures, requesting clearance to engage. The response came immediately, authorizing her to prosecute the contact as hostile. Intelligence had briefed all P-61 crews that German reconnaissance flights were probing Allied defenses in preparation for major offensive operations. The intercept proceeded with textbook precision. Park guided Mitchell through a climbing turn that positioned the Black Widow directly behind the fleeing German aircraft, while the pilot managed throttle settings and flight controls to maintain optimal radar tracking geometry. The P-61's twin engines provided ample power for the pursuit, and its advanced aerodynamics allowed sustained high-speed flight at altitude without the performance degradation that affected many other aircraft. At 4 miles range, Park announced positive target identification.
Distinctive radar signature matched intelligence profiles for the Heinkel HE-219, one of Germany's most capable night fighters. The aircraft was rare and valuable, crewed by experienced aviators who represented years of irreplaceable training and combat experience. Its destruction would significantly impact German night fighting capabilities while providing valuable intelligence about enemy defensive preparations. Mitchell armed her weapon systems as the range continued to close. The P-61's 4 20mm cannons were loaded with a mixture of high-explosive and armor-piercing rounds, while the forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns carried standard ball ammunition. The combined firepower was sufficient to destroy any aircraft in a single burst, provided the guns were accurately aimed and fired at optimal range. The German pilots' desperate maneuvers became increasingly erratic as the range dropped below 2 miles. Kessler was pushing his aircraft to its performance limits, executing violent turns and altitude changes that would have shaken off most pursuers. However, the P-61's radar maintained perfect tracking throughout the engagement, providing Park with continuous updates on target position and movement. The Black Widow's stability and precision as a gun platform allowed Mitchell to maintain firing position despite the evasive action. At 800 yards range, Mitchell squeezed her trigger. The night sky erupted in tracers and cannon flashes as 20mm shells reached out toward the German aircraft. The first burst fell slightly short, but Park's corrections brought the second volley directly on target. High explosive rounds detonated along the Heinkel's starboard wing and fuselage, severing control cables and puncturing fuel tanks. The night fighter rolled inverted and began a steep dive toward the earth below. Kessler fought desperately with his controls as his aircraft disintegrated around him. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the cockpit, while electrical systems sparked and failed. Behind him, Weber was screaming over the intercom that the radar equipment was destroyed and the reconnaissance mission compromised. The Uhu was doomed, but its crew's sacrifice had revealed crucial intelligence about Allied night fighting capabilities that would reshape German tactical planning. As the burning German aircraft disappeared into the darkness below, Mitchell was already turning toward her next assignment. Ground control was reporting multiple contacts forming up over the Ruhr, suggesting that the reconnaissance flight had been the prelude to a major attack. P-61 squadrons across northern Europe were scrambling to intercept what intelligence analysts were calling the largest German night operation of the war. The battle that followed would become known as the Night of the Black Widows among German survivors. Over 60 P-61s took to the air in coordinated response to Operation Steinbock, their radar screens painting German formations with deadly precision. What the Luftwaffe had intended as a surprise assault became a methodical slaughter as American night fighters systematically hunted down enemy aircraft attempting to penetrate Allied airspace. Major Klaus Richter, leading a formation of 12 Junkers U-188 bombers toward targets in Belgium, experienced the new reality of night warfare firsthand. His aircraft were flying in loose formation at varying altitudes, using tactics developed during years of successful night operations. The bombers maintained strict radio silence while navigating by dead reckoning and celestial observations, techniques that had previously allowed them to penetrate enemy territory undetected. The first bomber in Brenner's formation simply disappeared. One moment it was visible as a faint shadow against the stars, the next it was gone in a ball of orange flame that illuminated the night sky for miles. No warning had been given, no enemy aircraft had been spotted, and no distress signal had been transmitted. The destruction was so sudden and complete that surviving aircrew initially believed their comrade had suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure. The second loss came minutes later as another Ju-188 exploded without warning. This time, however, Brenner caught a glimpse of the attacking aircraft in the glare of the burning bomber. The silhouette was unmistakably American. Twin-boomed, with distinctive engine nacelles and a large central fuselage. The aircraft appeared and vanished like a phantom, leaving only destruction in its wake. Brenner immediately ordered his formation to scatter and execute evasive maneuvers, but the damage was already done.
Lieutenant Colonel Frank Harrison, leading a flight of 4 P-61s designated Nighthawk Squadron, was systematically dismantling the German formation with clinical precision. His radar operator, Master Sergeant Robert Kim, was tracking multiple targets simultaneously while coordinating attacks with other Black Widow crews operating in the area. The SCR-720 system's ability to handle multiple contacts allowed the American night fighters to engage several targets in rapid succession without losing situational awareness. Harrison's first kill had been a textbook intercept, approaching from below and behind to deliver a devastating burst of cannon fire that destroyed the target aircraft instantly. His second attack used different tactics, climbing above the German formation before diving to attack from a steep angle that maximized the effectiveness of his armament. Each engagement lasted only seconds, but the psychological impact on the surviving German crews was enormous. The German formation's disintegration accelerated as more P-61s joined the battle. Captain Jennifer Walsh, flying Shadow Dancer, intercepted 2 fleeing bombers attempting to reach cloud cover. Her radar operator guided her through a series of high-speed intercepts that resulted in both German aircraft being destroyed within minutes of each other. The precision and lethality of the attacks left no doubt that Allied night fighting capabilities had reached a new level of sophistication. Brenner's aircraft, now alone and flying desperately toward the presumed safety of German airspace, became the target for multiple P-61 crews simultaneously. The radar signatures of approaching American fighters filled his rudimentary detection equipment, indicating threats from multiple directions. His gunners reported muzzle flashes in the darkness, but their return fire was ineffective against enemies they could not see or accurately target. The end came as Brenner attempted a steep diving turn toward low altitude, where ground clutter might mask his aircraft's radar signature. Captain Morrison, the same pilot who had claimed multiple victories during the Normandy campaign, was waiting in perfect firing position. His burst of 20mm shells struck the Ju-188's wing root and fuel tank, creating a massive explosion that marked the end of Operation Steinbock's northern prong. Similar scenes were playing out across the length of the Western Front as German night bombers encountered P-61 squadrons wherever they attempted to penetrate Allied airspace. The coordination between ground radar stations and airborne night fighters had reached unprecedented levels of effectiveness, creating an integrated air defense system that could track and engage multiple threats simultaneously across hundreds of miles of front. The results were catastrophic for the Luftwaffe. Of the 400 aircraft committed to Operation Steinbock, over 120 were destroyed during the first night alone. P-61 squadrons claimed 73 confirmed kills, with additional victories credited to British night fighters and anti-aircraft defenses. The loss rate exceeded 30%, a level of attrition that no air force could sustain for extended operations. German aircrew who survived the massacre brought back reports that fundamentally changed Luftwaffe assessments of Allied capabilities. The P-61 was no longer an unknown threat, but a proven weapon system that could dominate night operations through superior technology and tactics. Intelligence analysts revised their estimates of American night fighter capabilities, performance upward by orders of magnitude, recognizing that previous assessments had dramatically underestimated the threat. The psychological impact on German night bomber crews proved even more significant than the material losses. Men who had once felt secure operating under cover of darkness now flew their missions in constant fear of invisible attackers. Formation discipline collapsed as aircraft scattered at the first sign of combat, reducing bombing effectiveness even when targets were reached. The night sky, once Germany's sanctuary, had become a killing ground, patrolled by American phantoms.
Technical analysis of P-61 performance during Operation Steinbach revealed the maturation of American night fighting doctrine. The aircraft were operating with reliability rates exceeding 90%, a remarkable achievement for complex electronic systems operating under combat conditions. Maintenance crews had mastered the intricacies of radar equipment and electronic warfare systems, keeping the sophisticated machines operational despite the demanding requirements of continuous night operations. Combat tactics had evolved to maximize the P-61's unique capabilities while minimizing exposure to enemy defensive measures. Standard operating procedures now included detailed coordination between multiple aircraft, allowing concentrated attacks against large enemy formations. Ground-controlled intercept procedures had been refined to provide precise vectoring that positioned American fighters for optimal attack geometry before initial radar contact was established. The effectiveness of these evolved tactics became apparent in subsequent operations as German night activity dropped precipitously. Enemy commanders were forced to choose between accepting unsustainable losses or abandoning night operations entirely. Most chose the latter, ceding control of European airspace to Allied forces and effectively ending Germany's strategic bombing capability. Individual P-61 crews were achieving victory totals that rivaled the most successful daylight fighter pilots. Captain Morrison's total reached 12 confirmed kills, while several other pilots claimed double-digit scores against German night bombers. These achievements were particularly significant given the technical complexity of night intercepts and the skill required to successfully engage targets in complete darkness. The success of American night fighters had strategic implications that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. German industrial production, already strained by daylight bombing attacks, could no longer be supplemented by night shift operations due to the constant threat of Allied air attack. Transportation networks were disrupted as rail and road traffic ceased moving during hours of darkness. The psychological impact on civilian morale was severe, as the population realized that no hour of the day offered safety from Allied air power. German attempts to develop countermeasures against P-61 operations met with limited success. Electronic warfare specialists introduced new jamming equipment and chaff dispensers, but the Black Widow's sophisticated radar systems adapted quickly to these threats.
Aircraft's exceptional endurance and payload capacity made it valuable for missions that would have been impossible with shorter-ranged fighters. Black Widow crews began attacking German airfields, supply depots, and transportation networks under cover of darkness, further expanding their impact on enemy operations. The versatility of the P-61 platform became increasingly apparent as crews developed innovative tactics for various mission types. Ground attack operations utilized the aircraft's heavy armament and precision radar for devastating strikes against point targets. Reconnaissance missions exploited its long range and electronic capabilities to gather intelligence deep in enemy territory. Maritime patrol flights protected Allied shipping from the few remaining German submarine and surface threats. Training programs in the United States continued to refine night fighting techniques based on combat experience from European operations. New crews arriving in theater demonstrated higher proficiency levels than their predecessors, reflecting improved training methods and better understanding of tactical requirements. The systematic approach to night fighter development was producing a new generation of aircrew specifically optimized for nocturnal combat operations. Pacific Theater P-61 operations presented different challenges and opportunities from the European campaign. Japanese aircraft were generally less heavily armored and armed than their German counterparts, making them vulnerable to the Black Widow's devastating firepower. However, the vast distances of Pacific operations stressed the aircraft's endurance capabilities and required different tactical approaches optimized for the unique geographic conditions. The success of P-61 squadrons in the Pacific demonstrated the universal applicability of American night fighting doctrine. Japanese bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, accustomed to operating with virtual impunity during night hours, found themselves facing the same invisible threat that had decimated German formations over Europe. The psychological impact on Japanese aircrew proved similar to that experienced by their German counterparts, with night operations being progressively abandoned due to unsustainable loss rates. As Allied forces advanced across the Pacific, P-61 squadrons provided continuous night air defense for invasion fleets and advanced bases. The aircraft's ability to patrol vast areas of ocean while maintaining effective radar coverage proved invaluable for protecting vulnerable shipping from night torpedo attacks. Japanese attempts to develop kamikaze tactics for night operations were largely thwarted by the presence of Black Widow patrols around Allied task forces. The technical reliability of P-61 systems under tropical operating conditions exceeded expectations, despite initial concerns about the impact of heat and humidity on sensitive electronic equipment. Maintenance procedures were adapted to local conditions, while supply chains were established to provide critical spare parts and components. The aircraft's robust design and redundant systems allowed continued operations even when individual components failed or degraded. Combat effectiveness in the Pacific theater matched or exceeded European performance levels, with P-61 crews claiming hundreds of Japanese aircraft destroyed during night operations. The lethality of the Black Widow's armament proved particularly devastating against lightly constructed Japanese bombers and fighters, often resulting in complete destruction of target aircraft with minimal ammunition expenditure. This efficiency was crucial given the extended supply lines and limited logistics support available in forward areas. Intelligence gathered from P-61 operations provided valuable insights into Japanese night fighting capabilities and tactics. Enemy aircraft were found to possess minimal radar warning equipment and primitive night fighting doctrine, making them extremely vulnerable to well-executed intercepts. This intelligence advantage allowed American forces to plan operations with confidence that Japanese night interference would be minimal. The strategic impact of P-61 operations in the Pacific complemented the broader Allied advance toward Japan itself. Japanese industrial capacity was increasingly disrupted by around-the-clock air attacks that prevented effective use of night shifts. Transportation networks were paralyzed as movement during darkness became impossible due to the presence of Allied night fighters. The cumulative effect was a significant reduction in Japanese war production and military effectiveness. As the war approached its conclusion in both theaters, the legacy of the P-61 Black Widow was already becoming apparent. The aircraft had not only achieved its primary mission of controlling night airspace, but it fundamentally changed the nature of aerial warfare. The integration of advanced radar technology with heavy armament and sophisticated tactics had created a new class of military aircraft that dominated its operational environment. The technological innovations pioneered in the P-61 program influenced post-war aircraft development in numerous ways. Radar systems became standard equipment on military aircraft, while the concept of specialized electronic warfare capabilities was incorporated into future designs. The twin-boom configuration, initially controversial, proved its worth and influenced several subsequent aircraft projects. Most importantly, the systematic approach to night fighting doctrine established principles that remained relevant well into the jet age. Post-war analysis revealed that P-61 squadrons had achieved one of the highest effectiveness rates of any aircraft type deployed during the conflict. The combination of advanced technology, superior tactics, and excellent training had created a weapon system that consistently outperformed enemy capabilities across multiple theaters of operation. The aircraft's service record established benchmarks for night fighting performance that influenced military aviation development for decades. Individual crew achievements during P-61 operations created legends that inspired future generations of military aviators. The precision and lethality demonstrated by Black Widow teams under the most challenging conditions possible established new standards for professional excellence in military aviation. The systematic approach to training and operations pioneered in P-61 squadrons became the model for subsequent specialized aviation units.
The aircraft continued serving in various roles well beyond the end of World War II, demonstrating the fundamental soundness of its design and the versatility of its capabilities. Many nations acquired P-61s through military assistance programs, while others developed similar aircraft based on lessons learned from American night fighting operations. The influence of the Black Widow extended far beyond its immediate operational impact during the war itself.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.